Hey guys, it's Amilkins here, and this is Work Naruto had Ice Release Part 6, and so I hope you guys enjoy. There's nothing I need to really say to you guys before we start the video, so without further ado, roll the intro. Naruto woke up in a plain-looking room. He didn't know where he was, but he heard someone coming up the stairs. He quickly gathered chakra into his mouth and prepared his Ice-style Nitrogen Breath Jutsu. The Ice-style Nitrogen Breath Jutsu was a jutsu made by Naruto as one of his inhibiting jutsu. Naruto had done some research and learned that the Earth's atmosphere was 78% nitrogen. All that nitrogen was just there, so all Naruto needed to do was breathe in and store a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen in his lungs. The oxygen would naturally be converted into CO2 by his body, and then he simply breathed out a compressed solution or mixture of nitrogen and carbon dioxide gas. The result was an extremely cold blast of air that could cause serious ice burns and form hoarfrost over the surface that it touched. Naruto's cheeks puffed up slightly, but it didn't matter. All he needed was one clean shot, and whoever was hit by the Nitrogen Breath Jutsu he had prepared would be out of commission for a long while. He turned slightly away from the door so that whoever was coming in wouldn't see him. The door creaked open, and before Naruto could turn over and release the blast of air he had prepared, the person spoke. "Naruto, you awake yet?" Kakashi said. Naruto relaxed and rolled over. He allowed the chakra in his mouth to permeate back into his body, and he breathed out a sigh. As he looked at Kakashi. "How long was I out?" Naruto asked. "Not long," Kakashi replied. "About a day, actually." "Well, get dressed and come downstairs. We're about to go train. You don't actually have to come if you're still too sore, though." "No, I'm fine," Naruto said. "Okay then, I'll see you outside soon," Kakashi replied as he left the room. Once Kakashi was gone, Naruto gritted his teeth and gingerly slid out of bed. His body still hurt from the fight with the Ice-style user. Even though Naruto didn't want to admit it, after the first few minutes of fighting the fake Hunter-nin, he'd stopped landing blows. The first few minutes he engaged the fake Hunter-nin, Naruto was winning in a landslide. Blow after blow rained down upon his opponent, and because Naruto activated his Ice-style ice armor, every time he touched his opponent, he gave them small ice burns. Naruto's Ice-style ice armor was a jutsu he created to complement whatever taijutsu form he used. He could both attack and defend at the same time. If someone tried to punch Naruto, he could simply encase the part of his body where the punch would land with ice, blocking the blow. And because the ice was so cold, when the person touched the ice, it would burn them similarly to if they touched dry ice, but much worse. After the few first minutes of fighting, Naruto started landing less and less blows, until he rarely landed a hit. The fake Hunter-nin started fighting at mid-range with Senbon and landed innumerable hits to Naruto. It irked him to no end that this person was this talented. Of course Naruto knew there were a lot of people that were better and stronger than him. He wasn't as arrogant as Sasuke to believe that he was the best. But it still hurt his pride knowing that if he didn't have his long-term effect jutsus or insane stamina, he would have lost, and badly. "I couldn't do much. Naruto paused and pinched himself hard. "Calm down and think," he told himself. "Okay, I need to get faster and get some more mid to long range ninjutsu. So let's go train." With that thought, Naruto steeled his nerves and started moving, ignoring the soreness of his muscles. He quickly dressed and walked outside. Naruto observed the rest of Team 7 trying to learn the tree walking exercise before walking up to Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei, I already know the tree walking exercise, so I'm gonna go over there and do some private training," Naruto said. When Kakashi nodded, Naruto moved to the far side of the clearing and began to stretch to get rid of some of the soreness in his muscles. As he was stretching, he was thinking of a way to get better at mid-range ninjutsu, or simply develop a mid-range ninjutsu and improve his speed. He had finished stretching when he heard Sasuke shout, "Stupid tree! Fire stop! Great fireball!" Sasuke, in his rage, at not being able to learn the tree walking exercise quick enough, had decided to light the tree on fire. Childish and pathetic, Naruto thought, as Kakashi quickly put the tree out and started reprimanding Sasuke. The way Sasuke performs that jutsu, he can barely be counted as a mid-range jutsu. Wait, that's it. Instead of burning things, it will create hoarfrost. Yes, that will do nicely, Naruto thought. Time skip, 4 days later. Ice style, Grand Frostball, Naruto said, for the 12th time in under 1 minute. He breathed out a blast of extremely cold air, and it formed into a ball right in front of him. The ball grew in size until it was about 4 feet in diameter, being fed by a stream of carbon dioxide and nitrogen gas coming from Naruto's lungs. The jutsu was very similar to the ice style nitrogen breath jutsu, in that it was composed of CO2 and nitrogen gases, but where they differed was that the Grand Frostball jutsu simply formed the gases into a tightly packed ball that exploded on contact with the surface. Naruto was extremely proud of himself, as he had finally found a solution to combat the fake Hunter Nin. He could perform the jutsu 12 times in under 1 minute. Not only that, but his speed was increasing, as Naruto had taken to wearing leg and ankle weights. The funny thing was that they weighed almost next to nothing, until he channeled chakra into them. Currently, Naruto had them set to 25 pounds on each arm. He had just upped the weight and was now having some trouble with moving, though nothing too severe. Naruto, satisfied with his progress, turned back to head back to Tazuna's house. He took a step, but then felt the strain of practicing a jutsu hundreds of times while wearing a collective pound of 100 pounds wash over him, 25 pounds in each arm and 25 pounds in each leg. He fell backwards and hit the ground and he was unconscious before he hit the ground. Time skip. Next morning. Haku's perspective. Haku was humming to herself as she picked flowers and herbs to help heal Zabuza. She was looking for specific ones, and she could only find a few per clearing. She moved on to the next clearing and found the boy who had gone toe-to-toe with her in their fight. He was lying unconscious, likely due to overstraining during training. As he lay there, Haku thought back to their fight. She couldn't help but notice that his skills almost perfectly complemented hers. They both were extremely fast, though she was faster, and if she had to guess, he had only gotten faster since their fight. He used more snow and frost, while she used ice structures. If they fought together, they'd make an almost unstoppable combo. It was a shame that she would have to fight him later. Maybe she should kill him now, to save herself some of the pain of having to feel something so painful later on. Haku seldomly found other boys attractive. Handsome, yes, but never once was she attracted to anyone. But this boy looked around her age. She felt something that she did not know what it was. As if pulled by strings, she moved to the side and gently traced her index finger over the scar running vertically over his right eye. In her left hand was a senbon, hidden in her basket, as she debated on whether or not to kill him. Naruto's perspective. As soon as a person came within 3 feet of Naruto, he woke up, but he stayed still and fluttered his eyelids to simulate dreaming. The person then ran their finger over his scar, and Naruto waited just a second more before springing into action and whipping out a kunai and placing it at the person's neck. "Ah, Hunter-san," Naruto said, as he saw the person tense. "Relax, you don't have to fight unless strictly necessary. And besides, you could have killed me while I slept, but you didn't, so I thank you for that." He talked for a while before Naruto said his goodbyes and left. Before he could leave, Haku said her name, and then watched as he left. He called over his shoulder what his name was, Naruto Uzumaki, and left. Haku sat there wondering and trying to figure out who exactly Naruto was, and what were his goals. Time skip, a couple of days later. After the fight between Kakashi and Zabuza. Zabuza was bleeding out. 1 minute he was fighting Kakashi, about to be killed. The next, Gato showed up and double-crossed him. Even though his arms were disabled, he aided Kakashi in the fight against Gato's thugs. Haku and Naruto were both too exhausted to fight, as they had gone toe-to-toe with each other again and pushed each other to the brink of exhaustion. And so, they just watched the fight from a distance. Zabuza didn't notice the Chunin-ranked missing nin hiding in the thicket of thugs. He'd stabbed Zabuza with a kunai, and it went straight to the liver. Though Zabuza had still survived long enough to kill the missing nin, the rest of Gato's thugs, and Gato himself. Right now his vision was starting to go dark, and Haku was crying next to him. He really thought of her as a daughter, and treated her like one. He'd managed a grimace mixed with a smile and said a quiet, "I'm sorry," before he died. Meanwhile, Naruto was watching the proceedings, feeling bad. But no one, save for Naruto, saw Zabuza mouth the words, "Take care of her," at Naruto, and Naruto responded with a subtle nod before Zabuza died. Time skip. Several hours later, Tasuna's house. Haku was sitting or lying in her bed, thinking about what she had to live for. It was currently well past midnight, and the kunai someone had left on the nightstand was looking really promising. She reached out for it, but before she could touch it, someone caught her hand, and her head snapped up, and she stared into the stoic face of Naruto. His pale blue eyes stared down at her. "I thought you might try something like this," Naruto said in a monotone. "How long were you there for?" Haku asked, turning away from Naruto. 15 minutes, Naruto responded. "See, I'm worthless. I couldn't even sense you. What purpose do I have to live for? Zabuza is dead. I let him down," she said. "Not really," Naruto responded. "Zabuza was already dying. His first fight with Kakashi proved that. While I may not be a medic nin, I did read some books on the subject, and I noticed that his chakra pathways were deteriorating. He looked somewhat sickly beneath his bandages. He was already going to die, though this way he died less painfully. As to what purpose there is for you to live, well, that's up to you," Naruto said. He finished his speech and released her hand and walked to the door. "You can either face this hardship and move on with your life, or you can take the easy way out, which currently resides in your hand," Naruto said before walking out the door. Time skip. After the bridge was finished. During the time the bridge was being built, Haku stayed mostly in the room. Naruto secretly hoped that she didn't decide to use the kunai she had that was in her room, as he's growing rather attached to her as of late. She could relate to him, but ultimately it was her decision. When T7 left to go back to Konoha, Naruto felt his hopes fall as she wasn't there, but it didn't show on his face. Then when he heard someone quickly catch up to them, he glanced sideways to see Haku, who was walking right next to him. "So I see you tried to take the harder way," Naruto said, and Haku nodded. "I found that even though I may not have a purpose or a goal, you do, and you saved me from myself. For that I thank you. To show my thanks, I decided to help you accomplish your goal," Haku responded. Naruto just smiled and continued on walking towards Konoha. Anyway guys, thanks for listening. I hope to see you guys next time.